Hi, everybody. There's just some boards around. We're going to start in like 10 or 15 minutes. If you want to grab snacks or water or any of that stuff, please go ahead and do it now. We'll get ready and begin the process. Thank you.
I'm gonna play a song for you. Welcome everybody. I'll be brief. Just want to welcome everybody who's here this evening. A lot of familiar faces in the audience, and there's a lot of people I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, but I think by now you all know who I am. Tonight is going to be a very important night for public input for the future of a huge 9-acre parcel in the heart of our downtown, which is Harford Memorial Hospital and all its adjoining property that it owns. But I wanted to take this opportunity. There's been a lot of talk lately about saving the hospital. It's been quiet for a while, then we announced this on the city website and social media, and I know a lot of people have a lot of passion about that hospital leaving, and that's a done deal. April 16th, 2020 is when the Maryland Healthcare Commission approved or allowed them to shut down and go with the freestanding healthcare facility in Aberdeen. From 2016 to 2020, I want you to know that this administration and the members of the council put up a pretty good fight, not just to keep the hospital here in Havre de Grace, but if they had to move it to Aberdeen, to put a full-service hospital in Aberdeen. We sent a lot of letters to the Healthcare Commission. They're all on record. If you go to Maryland Healthcare Commission, you can pull them up. All the letters we sent, questions that we wanted to hold Upper Chesapeake accountable for that they never really answered and clearly. We had many doctors and healthcare professionals anonymously fear for their jobs, tell us the issues and problems of closing a hospital. Because of this fight, we were ostracized at the state level. We were marginalized by our higher up elected officials. We walked into rooms sometimes and people would call us, oh, there's those troublemakers. We had elected officials at the county level literally submit letters to the Healthcare Commission that said the city of Havre de Grace is fighting for the hospital only so Mayor Martin can have political gain. Those letters are on file. And these people ran our county. I don't know how going from 2 hospitals to 1 helps, but the Maryland Healthcare Commission allowed to happen. But I will say this, I learned that the most important and most powerful force of nature in the state of Maryland is the University of Maryland. Doesn't matter what political party you are, doesn't matter what office you hold. I wrote 13 letters to Governor Hogan for 5 minutes of his time. My last 2 letters said, Governor Hogan, you have been governor for 5 years. I am the mayor of the 17th largest city in Maryland. I am asking for 5 minutes of your time. I will hop in your car from one place to another, but I need to know from you, is there a chance we could stop this? And he would never meet with me. University of Maryland runs the state. Again, people went lock, stock, and barrel. They lined up rank and file. April 16, 2020, in the height of COVID, when everything was shut down. Everything was shut down. Matter of fact, Governor Hogan was opening up a hospital in Laurel, Maryland, an abandoned hospital to treat COVID patients. I thought, well, this is not a really good time to close a hospital when you're opening up abandoned hospitals. And when we found out that they were having a Zoom meeting to do the final disposition of what's going to happen, we were like, that's when we really tried to reach out to everybody, U.S. senators, state senators, the governor's office. Please don't allow this to happen during COVID when the public can't even attend these meetings. But it happened anyway. So April 16, 2020, the Maryland Healthcare Commission voted to allow this hospital to close. And the reason I'm opening this up, and if there was, I wasn't going to bring it up tonight, but our newspaper really lacks anymore in Harford County. And it's hard for citizens to get the news. And with 200 citizens here, please know what I'm telling you. And you can be disciples. If you hear anybody else think there's a chance, we did everything we could. We really did. The contentious relationship we had with Upper Chesapeake, and it was a cat and mouse game. I want you to know that today, our relationship is much better. There's a new president, CEO, the vice president, Elizabeth Wise, the president, she's been great to work with. Mark Shaver, the vice president, he's been really good. New board. Sometimes you just have to move on. And we want open lines of communication. So we have a good relationship now with the hospital because it's a done deal and it's going to happen. But we're working with them to know what's going to happen to this 9 acres of land in the heart of our city. And when I say 9 acres, that's the parking lot across the street, that's the parking garage, the plant itself. And they actually own a lot of properties around there, some houses and vacant lots belong to the University of Maryland. So it's important. And I want everyone in this room to know that I believe when you elect someone to be mayor or elect a citizen to be on a council, that you put a lot of faith in their judgment to make decisions day-to-day basis of, street repairs, sidewalks, things like that. But we also know that when you're dealing with like a $7 million downtown restoration project, or you're dealing with 9 acres of a legacy property, these decisions shouldn't be made in a nutshell. These are the mega decisions that no one mayor or no 6 council members should bear on their own. This needs to have public input because this affects our lives and future generations. And so I want everybody to know that tonight is a serious night. Everyone will be heard. We have gone through great lengths to make sure that everyone's comments are recorded and everything's going to be considered. This is not an exercise of futility. This is your government saying to you, what do you want to see? We all have heartstrings to Harford Memorial Hospital. We could all sit here all night and talk about stories. But tonight we're going to talk about the future. So I thank you for being here tonight. I thank Tim Borsier and his staff for being here. Now Tim's going to run the whole meeting after this. After this, I'm going to shut up. But I just wanted to talk to my fellow citizens and kind of give you a little bit of the 5-minute tour of what got us here today. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming out in this heat. And here's Tim.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. So not to beat up on too much of what has already been said, I don't want to repeat what the mayor said too much. I guess first off, I'm Tim Borsier. I'm the Director of Planning with the city. Thank you all for taking your time and being here. It is nicer here than it is outside, at least, so we have air conditioning. This isn't an exercise in futility. We're at the very beginning of a process of studying what to do with the vacant, soon-to-be vacant hospital site and the surrounding area. We're looking at the whole residential office zoning district. So that's all part of this process, and it all begins with speaking with stakeholders and speaking to people in the community. So that's why we set up this meeting for all of you today. I know a lot of people are here, maybe won't have a chance to speak at the end of the night. Some people are shy. You might think of something when you leave. So I think everybody has this little half-page agenda. My email address is on there, my phone number is on there, and there's also a little QR code on the right corner. If you click on that, it'll take you to a Google Forms page where you can provide input using that method in case you don't want to get up and speak today. The main thing, if you want to keep in the loop with what's going on, if you didn't sign in downstairs, make sure you sign in before you leave, or send me an email or call me and give me your contact information. That way we can keep you in the loop. Tomorrow or on Monday, I'll send out an email. It'll have all the information that you were able to pick up at the door today. It'll have the link to the Google Forms page so you guys can continue to leave information and any other information as we go forward to keep everybody involved in the process. So I have with me today Alex and Milton. They're with BLTA Architects. They were part of a competitive bid process and they came out on top. They've done a lot of similar work in smaller neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So they're here to listen to all of you tonight as well. As the mayor had mentioned, this is recorded and we're also live streaming. So there's people at home watching as well. If that makes you nervous, again, you can always go online or you can send me an email. So the way this will work, in whatever order, you can come up to the microphone in the middle here. We're looking for any feedback you want to give on what you'd be looking for replacing the hospital location. if you want to discuss your concerns or any of that sort of stuff, that'd be great. We're not affiliated with the hospital, as the mayor had alluded to. So I can't answer any questions on the behalf of the hospital of why they decided what they decided, why they're not doing other things. That's just not what we're here for. We're just really here to gather input. So whoever wants to come up and start, we may have some questions after you provide us some input just to kind of follow up, and we'll do this back and forth until 8:30 or so.
Before you start, who owns the property?
University of Maryland.
So is there like an inkling that they're going to donate it to the city?
No.
Or- Is the city going to try to buy it?
I'm not sure if that's ever been part of the discussions in the past, but
I guess I don't understand the point of this meeting then.
well, somebody's going to do something with that property, right? And so this is the time to tell us what you would like to see at that property. So if there's some concern you have about what it redevelops into, that's what we want to hear. If there's something you think would be necessary, that's what we want to hear. But we're at a very beginning stage of the process. So it's not like we were here today to say, hey, we're building 2 motels and a grocery store, or 500 townhouses. Like, nobody is at that point yet. So we are really at such a beginning stage. We want to hear from all of you to see what you think should be there, what your concerns are with redevelopment, that sort of thing. So
The zoning will control what happens.
yes, that's correct.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about what the residents
Sure.
want the zoning is, what permitted use is. And also, I don't understand why we have an architectural firm here, you said?
They're architectural and planning. They work for BLT Architects.
But for whom would they land? Any developer that buys?
No, for the zoning code. So there's the thing called form-based zoning. So it's a mix of design code with actual written laws and a use schedule, like you had mentioned.
Hey, Tim,
Yeah, the question was,
Tim. So for the benefit of the people in the back, if we can't get the people to the microphone, then we'll take the microphone to them.
Okay.
Or can you repeat their questions for
Sure.
the benefit of everybody?
yeah, so the question was, why are you all here tonight? That was the basic question. And then there was it was asked if I would kind of describe zoning. So in the city, there's different zones. And in those different zones, you can do different things. So the hospital is in a residential office district is what it's called. And then adjacent to the hospital is residential office. And that was made to allow things that would complement the hospital when the zoning code was put in 1982. Now that the hospital's going away and that you've already seen some of the other independent doctors' offices and those things leave, we're kind of studying the area to see what would go in its place, let's say, in those areas. So what's allowed now is a mix of residential uses, townhouses, single-family homes, and office uses. So things that would be consistent with doctors' offices, things that would complement the hospital. I believe there was a florist in the area at one point. So all that is sort of up for grabs this evening, let's say. So that's sort of part of what we're trying to find out is what things you would like to see there.
So does the city have final approval over who they sell the property to?
So she's asked if the city has final approval over who University of Maryland sells the property to, and we don't. We do have some say in what's developed there. Mm-hmm.
Are they working with you to kind of try to make it something that everybody would want?
We've been she's asked if they're working with us to give us something that we want. So they'll have to follow the zoning code. They have been cooperative. We've had meetings with the hospital and their staff. The mayor had mentioned that we have a more cooperative relationship than they did in the past. So we have had meetings, and these are things that we're discussing. But again, we're at the very beginning stages, so the things that we discuss don't include all the things that we hope to hear from you this evening.
Is it possible that another hospital might be interested in it, say Christiana?
I was asked if another hospital may be interested in the property. I can't really speak for who's contacted the hospital. From the city level, I don't know whether University of Maryland did or not. I can't speak for them.
I will say, let me just add one thing to that. I think it's before you came on board, Tim.
Okay.
We did reach out 2021 several times to Christiana, and their leadership came and we took them on tours of the city. They seem very interested. We were trying to court other hospitals to seemed interested. They put a lot of money in Elkton Hospital. And they would keep contacting us every couple months. We keep contacting them. We haven't heard from them about 6 months, but I just want to let you know that we reached out to other partners. Union and Christiana's the only one that took the bait. So we don't know. I'm just letting everybody know. It's a good question.
Reach out to them again.
Well, we're working on it. I mean, it's just.
What about MedStar?
I was getting ready to say that too.
Yeah.
MedStar, we reached out to.
Because they want to get a bigger foothold in the county, I know that.
So anyway, I'll let you know that that idea, we did work on it. Christina right now is the only one that came here a few times.
Tim,
Mr. Ferry, yeah? Mr. Ferry in the back has a question, sorry.
Be right with you. Alan Fair. In my mind, two of the worst things happened in Havre Grade since I've been here in 1946. One was when the racetrack left, and then the second was when this hospital leaves. I've been in real estate almost 60 years, and I can tell you, I can't count the number of people, a lot of elderly, that moved to Havre Grace, bought homes because of the hospital being here. It's a fact. It's a fact. Now myself, let's say in the last 2 months, I'm on blood thinners. I was in the hospital emergency room twice to stop bleeding. I drove there by myself. Another 2 or 3 times I've been there for x-rays. Just last week I was in there for blood work. Tomorrow I go for an x-ray on my chest. Now fortunately, I still drive. Clark here takes me to a lot of places. But let's say I couldn't drive any longer and I didn't have Clark or my wife or my daughter here to take me. How would I get there? Call a cab? Call Uber? It's a big problem for a lot of people, and I don't have an answer for it. I'd love to see something medical. The other thing we need in Havre de Grace is a hotel. Bad. So if that went there, I guess I wouldn't have a problem. One thing I wouldn't want to see is low-income housing. So, and I don't think the city wants to see that either, the city fathers. Right, taxpayers. That's all I've got. Thank you for listening.
I appreciate you, Mr. Fair. That's great. Yeah, if we can continue that sort of input about what you'd like to see there. I mean, not to sound wrong about this, I understand your story and the hospital being close, and we've heard a lot of those sorts of things, but the hospital most likely isn't going to be there. Not that medical or other things couldn't supplant part of it, but that what you want to see in the future, or what doesn't give you heartburn, or what gives you heartburn, that's really what we're looking for tonight.
okay, Mike.
The gentleman in the blue T-shirt, he was next. Sorry. Do you mind passing the microphone to him, Eric?
I'm not sure I need that. My name's Don Mulligan.
Well, sorry. 1 second.
The live stream, I need you to speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm Don Mulligan. I've been a resident of Paddocks outside of Bully Rock for about 12 years now. And I have great sympathy for the situation that Alan's just explained, and apparently a lost cause at this point. But my question is, our dear friend, the CEO Lyle, at the public meetings over the last few years, often referred to this professional study of all the alternative solutions for how to redevelop the hospital or the property that it sits on, and that they had hired a professional company who'd done analysis on other small towns who lost hospitals and how they recovered and what their alternatives were. And we asked, at the public meeting several times, what's the results of the study? What are, option A, B, C? And it was always, that's private information in the hospital, we can't share it. So has that situation changed?
It is. I think the study you're speaking of, they hired the real estate firm Cushman Wakefield. They did provide a marketing study, I believe in 2018. So in that marketing study, it said where what was most desirable for the area and also what was most feasible economically. So they do have a list of some of those things. Unfortunately, that was in 2018. Since then, we've had COVID. There's been some market shifts. So this is, while that is available, I can provide that information if you signed up on the sign-in sheet. It's all public information, so I can share that. But those things do change. So yeah, it's been done, but it changes. It's 5 years old now, going on 6 years old.
My name is Kathleen Lee. I'm the vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission here in town. And we've been discussing this intently at our commission meetings. We would like to see, since it's in the historic district, housing that reflects the houses around it. We're not looking for townhouses. We're looking for detached houses that reflect the Victorian and colonial period of our historic district. We don't want any retail. We've got plenty of retail downtown, and I'm afraid if we have retail there, it will take away from our businesses in Washington Street and St. John Street. So we're asking, please, let's have housing that represents our historic district and not some cookie cutter houses or townhomes or retail or high-rise condominiums. We don't want any of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great feedback. I appreciate it.
My name's Ed Garono. As I understand it, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but the hospital owns the property now, or University of Maryland.
That's correct.
And they are searching for a buyer. And they will find a buyer. A buyer will say, oh, I would like to do this, this, and this, but I need the city's approval to do that, or the proper zoning for it, whatever you call it. So the city's role will be to control through zoning what can go there. Is that correct?
Through that and the development process, yeah. So Ed's speaking here as an individual tonight, but he's on the planning commission. So Ed reviews site plans and subdivisions and all those things. So there may be some tweaks in our normal process because of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be through that development review process and through zoning.
Yeah, so what we would like from the citizens tonight is ideas, like we've heard, of what the citizens would like to see in that space, and then the city can translate that into the zoning permitted, approved, or whatever.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Carolyn Zinner, and I'm a former council member. I got on the council because I worked very hard to fight the University of Maryland about closing the hospital about 8 years ago. We had a group, Healthy Neighbors for Havre degrees. We went out, we picketed, we wore our T-shirts, Save Our Hospital, all to no avail. I do want to try to, I have a background in healthcare. I've worked in healthcare my whole life. So the issue with Christiana Hospital is that Maryland is the only state in the union that has something called a Medicare waiver. Christiana is struggling mightily with Union Hospital in terms of their billing model. It's like no other state in the country. So as a result of that, that's one of the reasons probably Christiana cannot come down here and look at the facility that we have now today. The other thing is Union Hospital in Elkton was independent. They were under a marketing agreement with the University of Maryland. However, it didn't go through. During the process of the town halls, I believe really what happened was that Union Hospital realized that University of Maryland didn't share their values, quite honestly, and they backed off. They didn't want Upper Chesapeake to take them over, and they didn't want to continue their management agreement with the University of Maryland. So as a result, they were independent. So it was easier for another hospital facility, and as a matter of fact, LifeBridge courted them for a while, and for whatever reason, the finances didn't work out. And then Christiana came in and courted them. So it was easier if they had physicians that were contracted to them to be able to absorb them. Not so with the University of Maryland. Most of the physicians are contract physicians, so they would have to break those contracts to be absorbed by another hospital system. So the logistics of it and the contracts of it and the billing model really precludes another hospital coming in and taking over this facility. So I sent a message to Tim about what I would like to see, and I'm kind of in Kathy's court here, but just a little different. We need a grocery store of some kind. There's a, and if anybody's been to Bel Air, they probably have seen the Italian market called Savona, and they have they have a nice inventory of Italian foods, olives, olive oil, things like that. But that could be expanded. It doesn't have to be just that. And if they only did sandwiches, kind of like Savona does, except for this these foodstuffs that they sell, which is limited, they probably wouldn't be able to exist here because we don't have a courthouse, we don't have the number of people going out for lunch and things like that. But it would be a great place for tourists to go, and even for residents to go, to be able to get a nice lunch. And they're not open for dinner, but you can combine that, and I've seen it in other cities where you can have a smaller footprint and still provide fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, good deli meats or things like that, and also serve the public with maybe some type of a lunch or something like that. So I think if you're listening to what might work in that environment, I think something like that. The other thing that I've given thought to is University of Maryland, or Upper Chesapeake, whatever you want to call them, they are cutting back certain services. And Lyle Sheldon promised us the world in this freestanding medical facility. Everything that you have here, we can have there in the freestanding medical facility on an outpatient basis. So they're doing away with the Coumadin clinic, so that affects people like Alan Fair and others, many others, mostly elderly patients who are on Coumadin. The system now is you go to the hospital, pharmacist takes your blood, does the reading, and adjusts your medication right then and there. The new model will be either you'll have a home test or you'll do it in the physician's office, and they'll have to take the blood. Then, if you do the home test, you have to call your primary care physician. Then, they have to determine what your new dose of the Coumadin is. The problem with that is University of Maryland says they can't hire physicians. Well, if you continue to put these tasks on primary care physicians, you're going to have less chance of hiring physicians, because that's another task that they have to do besides deal with the computer system that is very difficult for older people. I take a couple to their doctor's appointments. They don't have a computer. They were called a half an hour before an appointment to do their registration online. So when we got to the office, the wife asked me to fill it in, and so I was asking her the questions, and I used the tablet. But if they didn't have somebody who could take them, what are they going to do if they don't know how to use these, the digital, they're not in the digital age, not like younger people are. But the system seems to look at everyone at their age, not forward thinking in terms of age. So, well, what I can do, I'm sure these people can do. And that's not the case. And we have a lot of older people in this community. It's not necessarily a young community, it's a mixed community. So my belief is that if a group of architects can work with whoever the developer is going to be and see if they cannot somehow keep these outpatient services here in some form, in a smaller footprint. For example, radiology, it's mammograms that they won't do. So they're not offering women's health, but they're not offering it in Aberdeen either. You have to go out to Bel Air to get a mammogram because they say the radiologists don't want to travel. You don't have to travel anymore. They pull it up on a screen. They don't need to travel for a mammogram. So they should offer that, and they should continue the Coumadin clinic because a healthcare professional should work at the top of their license. And it should not be a physician doing this. It should be a pharmacist doing this. The pharmacist is capable of doing it today, and they're working at the top of their license. Not a physician who should be given different type of care to patients. So there should be a way to build into that first floor, not only food services, but some type of a clinic, a small clinic, and maybe maintain a radiology department. And I don't know if it would be possible. The radiology department is on the first floor. They're lead line walls. Maybe there's a way that you can save them and build around it and have a small registration area. But I think that would be such a goodwill gesture on the part of the University of Maryland, because we have gotten burned badly. We were promised, probably 15 years ago, we were promised a, what do you call it? Trauma center because of our location between Baltimore and Christiana, which are both trauma centers. So this was, we were right off of 95. We had the trains coming through. We had these buses. We have accidents on 95. Nothing's changed. But all of a sudden, we don't need a trauma center. Okay, I can live with that. But now we don't even need acute care. And part of it was because of the Affordable Care Act, because the Affordable Care Act wanted everybody to be the same. But Maryland didn't want to lose their Medicare waiver. So they worked with the government and
Carolyn?
they kept it.
Sorry.
I know.
We have other people.
I know, but
Yeah.
I just want people to understand when they
I
ask
know.
a certain question. But I would say no townhouses, no Bully Rock houses. If you want to do apartments, maybe do some commercial on the first floor, maybe some apartments, and then maybe some condos. I don't know, to spread out the way the money's spent. And, okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Eric, oh, sorry.
That's fine. My name is Dorothy Shower. I was a Pitcock. I was born and raised in this city. I raised children in this city. My family had a business in the city. The mechanical building at the back of the hospital is my grandparents' property. So when I say I have a vested interest in this, I do. I live there. I live a half a block from the hospital. I don't want anything in there that's going to take away the value of the house that I have worked my entire life to pay for and maintain. All right, I don't want a grocery store. We couldn't keep 2 grocery stores in this town, which is why we're stuck with Weiss. We don't need any more restaurants, okay? We need homes. This is what I was told the last time I was in a room with you and Phil Powell and whoever else, is that we're in desperate need of single-family homes. So let's take Lodge Lane back, and it is a lane, it is not a street, and let's put the houses back that were there. Maybe not the exact houses, but something similar. Keep Havre de Grace the way it is so that the people that have lived here and have moved here for the small town get to keep it. Thank you.
Well, before you go away, I think we spoke on the phone earlier.
Yes,
So
we
I was
did.
hoping you'd come
We did.
speak. So the one thing you'd mentioned to me on the phone is that you said from your porch you didn't want to stare at a large building. Can you
Right.
tell us what you see from your porch now?
What I see from my porch now is part of the hospital, which has always been there. The house that's across the street, the 2 ugly houses that they put in across the alley from that. Trees, green. We have a lot of people that walk down our street, and a lot of people that walk down the street really like the street. But it's not going to stay that way if they build any of the things that they're talking about. And, you know, I'm sorry we lost the hospital, but now that's in the past and we have to look to the future. And I really can't see anything going in there other than homes for people.
Great. Thank you. Eric, Warren had his hand up was the last I saw, and then we'll go to you next. Can you reach Warren from there? Maybe pass the microphone.
want me to speak loudly?
No, yeah, you have to speak in the microphone.
During the evolution of this process, my contact was with the University of Maryland Resources. And the one thing that I was told assuredly over and over again is Upper Chesapeake and the University of Maryland was never going to sell that property, deliver that property, or have that property further developed as any kind of a competitive healthcare facility. It's difficult to argue with that.
Thank you for that information, Warren. I think we had the lady over here next to Eric, and then there's the gentleman in the white long sleeve white shirt after that.
Hello, my name is Bree Perry, and I've been a resident of Havre Grace since I was a baby. That's 47 years ago. I am speaking on behalf of the people who do not have transportation and rely on Harford Transit or Uber or cabs to get to the hospital. I do agree that we need some type of medical offices. Like my stepdad goes to the Coumadin Clinic, so if that's going to go away, then he has to rely on, primary care. I also agree we do need radiology. I have to travel to Bel Air for mammograms. I do not own a car, so I rely on my family or public transit. And if you've taken Harford Transit, it's not, I love that we have a bus service here, but sometimes it's not the most reliable. And people have taken the bus to Upper Chesapeake. It runs every hour. That's not good if, there's a medical emergency and that's the only way you can go. But we do need some type of medical offices, whether it's radiology, lab work. I am against any type of housing, especially high-rise condos, townhomes, anything that's going to block that view. So if there is going to be housing in there, I do agree it has to be like the other lady said, low density housing or single family if there's going to be any type of housing there. That's really all I have. We need something that would provide essential services to people. A lot of the doctor's offices have moved down on 40. If you don't have a car or if you live in town, sometimes it's hard to get to those offices. So we do need something there like that. So, and I'm hoping that, they will listen to, and put something there that's going to be viable for Havre Grace for years to come.
Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Thank you. John Narvell, 415 South Union. I also have lived there my whole life. I bought my grandparents' home. It's been our family home for 5 generations now. I echo the same sentiments. We want to see something that's in character for the surrounding neighborhood. We don't want to see it plastered with 5-story apartment buildings. I don't want to see clusters of townhomes. I don't want to see a modern layout where they maximize the square footage of every lot. I know that's the reality of real estate development. It doesn't have to be. I don't want to see a project come in here and the first thing they're going to do is ask for a zoning variance to build something taller, higher, wider, take streets away. I've heard rumors that, of what's proposed in some areas. I'd want to see Lodge Lane restored. I want to see a development that is laid out in the same character of the surrounding blocks. I've lived there long enough when there were stores on Washington Street, there were restaurants there on Washington Street. I'm okay with that. That was the character of the neighborhood before Upper Chesapeake took over the whole block and built parking lots and parking garages. I want that back. I think a lot of people want that back. I echo the sentiments. I want to see character housing that's in the character of the neighborhood. Yes, there's houses that have been cut up into apartments. If you look around, that has been changed. The apartment buildings are no longer apartment buildings. the offices are turning back into homes, you know? That's what we want to see, you know? I'm concerned with what the current zoning allows under RO. That's a question I have. What's allowed under the current zoning? What constitutes an office? What constitutes residential? Are giant apartment buildings already allowed and it's already conforming use and we have no say over that? Is that a question that you can answer?
Some of that. Multifamily is not allowed in the district now, so no apartments. Townhouses and single-family attached and detached, that's usually duplexes or single-family homes are all allowed. So townhomes would be the most dense. The code, I think, allows them in clusters of 8 is what's allowed now. As far as office and the height of the building and stuff, I don't know that off the top of my head, but it would be something less in height than what the hospital is currently.
Okay. And just, I'm trying to remember, I had a bunch of questions. The restoration of Lodge Lane. I understand that that's on a long-term lease to the hospital. I'm sure any developer comes in is going to want that property. I am absolutely against that. You know, it's a city street. There's an effort to reclaim city property and city right-of-ways. That should be the first priority on that. That is city property. That's my property. That's not Harford Memorial Hospital. It's not Upper Chesapeake's. That's the city's property. It should be reclaimed, and that should be a condition that we cannot waiver on. Okay. So I'll give other people a chance to speak. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Behind you, or I don't know who I am. Sorry.
Hi, name is James Poe. I live in Havre. I've been here for 4 years. The reason we moved into this area is because of the small town character and the charm. Two points I want to bring up, or two things. One is a question to the council. Is there any consideration of enhancing the EMS services, since there won't be any nearby facilities that our population will need for emergency care or for urgent care in those times of need? Has that been considered?
There was a discussion about leaving space for an ambulance depot.
Okay.
But not,
So-
I mean, but obviously this is all negotiation.
But
so
nonetheless, even if there isn't one put in that neighborhood, there should be some beefing up of the EMS services here in the town so that we can make sure we have proper advanced life support services, ALS type services available to our residents here in Havre de Grace. Second, I am on the side of everybody who's mentioned that keeping a historical character to that area, and that should be paramount as well to the community. I do not want to see yet another part of Havre de Grace that looks completely different from the rest of Havre de Grace. I think we want to see a nice continuation of the character, the charm, and the historic importance of this town. So whatever is considered, whether it be a grocery store, whether it be a single-family homes, or a mix of all that, it all should conform to some historical character code if that's available.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Duncan. I'm a current resident of Heron Harbor and Concord Street. Before moving to Maryland, I was the regional vice president for a national home developer, and I personally responded to many redevelopment plans over the years. There's 3 methods of obtaining redevelopment plans, and you've classified this as a redevelopment. One is a sale outright of the property. I can tell you a developer does not like that at all. They'd maintain all the risk of the property and the zoning requirements. There's 2 other methods that are much more preferred from developers. One is a solicitation, RFP, for a redevelopment plan. Clean slate, come in, what would you do with this property? You then work with the municipality to make any zoning changes, modifications to the property to have a mutual agreement. Third is if you are going to put it out, or the University of Maryland is going to put it out for bid, is to put together a fact sheet on the property or a solicitation of parameters for a redevelopment. There's been a lot of good suggestions here. If the township has a preference on the type of development that wants to be there, that could go into a solicitation. So from a developer standpoint, I would prefer to respond to an RFP competitively with for a solicitation, or to respond with a development plan that meets certain parameters. And it's not hard to put together a parameter sheet. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you for your advice. I appreciate that. Eric? Oh.
My name is John Ford. To answer the gentleman's question about EMS, Harford County has a career service, and they have at least one in every firehouse in the county, and as well there are still the volunteers in the firehouse. Some of them have given up their ambulances. The closest hospitals that they have to go to are either Upper Chesapeake or Christiana or Union Hospital, and that could take some time, as well as all the paperwork they have to fill out now. So it would be that's one thing you probably would really not have to worry about, since we have the career ambulances.
Thank you.
There is an urgent care right across the street from the hospital. I think they're Uni Urgent Care. I don't know if anybody has talked to them about the possibility of expanding their services, but maybe that's an alternative. And I've worked at Harford Memorial for a while. I would imagine it's full of asbestos and has a bunch of other problems associated with it. So I don't know that it would be very easy to knock the second floor off, put offices in. I don't even think you can move walls at this point, but.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, in one of the handouts I gave, there was a discussion about the cost it would take to redevelop the hospital, like the building itself. And I think that's why the decision was made for them to go somewhere else. So it would be an expensive undertaking. Jared.
Jacob Bennett, Harford County Council, and living over on the 600 block of Bourbon Street, so it's nice to walk here. You know, I share with everybody else with just seeing how crummy this situation is. It's something that, you know, as residents of Havre Grace, I think it hurts us all. But that being said, I really appreciate Mr. Fair's remarks about the idea of a hotel being there. Thinking about how huge an asset that parking garage is, I mean, that makes that space very lucrative for somebody who would want to bring a hotel to that property. Not to mention the fact that would support so many of the industries that exist in Havre Grace with the arts and with the festivals. And lastly, it would be a big revenue generator for our city, since we would be getting 50% of that hotel tax given directly back to the city of Havre Grace. And then when you put a hotel there with the parking garage, we could look at turning the parking lot that exists back into green space, back into single family homes, and returning continuity to that street that people live on. But I really appreciate that idea, because I think it would bring a lot of positives to enhancing the industries that exist in Havre Grace and healing that hole that's being created.
Thanks, Jacob.
I'm Volney Ford, Chair of the Planning Commission. Looking back, a little historic fact. Henry Richardson built that parking garage, and he built it with an eye towards being able to make money off of, it was a private parking garage, to make money off of the fact that the hospital was there. And then later on, the hospital acquired the garage. Henry told me before he died that he had that garage designed, his 2-story parking garage. He had it designed to support a 3-story building on top of it. It's structurally engineered to carry three stories of building on top of it. So just wanted everybody to know that, you know, before you start talking about tearing that thing down. particularly if you're going to do some sort of little commercial facility right there, or even a clinic. You know, if you built a hospital clinic on top of it and then took the rest of that area and go back residential with it. But it's quite an asset sitting there, even though it looks kind of funny right now. Thanks.
Tim, several years ago, Economic Development Advisory Board did a detailed study on hospital, or on hotel. We met with the developer of the hotels at White Marsh, plus the vice president of Marriott Corporation. And basically, what we were told is we just don't have the critical mass for anything other than a boutique hotel. So it's we just can't get there.
Okay.
I'm Dwayne Brink. I live at 401 South Union. And so we moved here in 2013. We bought a house that was going back to the earth. We put a ridiculous amount of money in it. Kind of like to be able to maintain its value. I fall firmly in the camp of everybody that was residential for that area. Lodge Lane, put it back, right? All of that. I'm okay with single family homes, even twins, you know, in some instances, no problem. There's, you know, if you're gonna build houses along Lodge Lane, you might consider making it one way to the south, sort of opposite of Washington, because it's not wide enough to be a 2-lane road. But a question I have, we're all kind of assuming that the big building goes away. Is there some possibility that when they go out for bid, somebody says, well, we're gonna redevelop that building into something else?
It's possible. I can't really speak for the hospital. I mean,
But it could happen, yeah?
yeah, yeah, it's a possibility.
Charlie Heiner, I'll be real short. I like some of the ideas that are coming out, and I think that's really what they want to know is the ideas that the people have. I think we all agree that we want residential, we don't want high density. So it's going to be really important for the zoning folks. So when zoning comes up to be questioned for this property and for the city, pay attention that the politicians will listen to what you have to say because it's our city, it's not their city. The other thing is a boutique hotel doesn't sound bad on this site. You know, but housing, they're going to look at density, and housing is what they're going to be looking for with the developer. And I think we all agree that we want housing there more than we want any type of commercial type of activity going on there. The other thing is maybe if someone said about the reuse of the building, but again, that's up to the person that would actually redevelop it. But assisted living, we really don't have anything in the city that's assisted living. So that part of that property could become part of that. I'm not saying the whole property. So keep your minds open. Keep the garage. If we can keep the garage, it has a lot of, Volney had a really good point, it has a lot of value to the property around. But to bring in something and watch, I think the biggest thing is with our zoning is with the RO, I couldn't tell you exactly how high it goes, but it might, 60 in the city is tops. So they're not gonna put a 10-story building. That's just not allowed, and we won't allow that anyway. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Charlie. You're okay? Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Eric here in the back, the lady in purple and then the lady next to her both had stuff to say.
Hi, I'm Justina Ireland. I live at 226 South Union Avenue. Also put a ridiculous amount of money into my house, so shout out to you. I'm more concerned not just about like what goes in there, but the traffic. So right now, the traffic on South Union Avenue is abysmal, and that's 7. So to get anything repainted or redone, you have to go through the state, which I think we've all dealt with the state in some form or another is impossible. My question is what is the city doing to be proactive to make sure that the traffic patterns are going to support whatever people want to come in? Like, what kind of redoing zoning before people start putting in bids on this stuff so that we can kind of discourage some of this stuff we know that we don't want?
Yeah, I mean, so the way traffic studies are done is it's based on what's going to be built there. So it's kind of hard to think about traffic patterns and then sort of back into that. But as you mentioned, that's a state highway. So anything that would occur there would almost definitely require a traffic study that would be reviewed by State Highway Administration. We also sent those, we review those studies as well, but we also send those to the county. They have a lot more resources than we do when it comes to that, and a lot more knowledge. So we would work with them to make sure that the proper situation was mitigated for those type of uses. But if Union Avenue couldn't handle something, or Revolution or one of those things, State Highway would let us know, and then have to reel things kind of back in if there weren't improvements that were possible.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Thomas Barthel. I live up the hill in Bayview Estates. For the last 12 years, I've been a patient at the Coumadin Clinic. I'm 55, so I don't fit into the elderly category like my parents, who also go to the Coumadin Clinic. But I'm there every 2, 4, 6 weeks, whatever my numbers dictate. And as it is now, I can go from my house in Bayview Estates to the Coumadin Clinic and back in a span of 30 minutes flat. So I don't have to take time off from work. Every time I go to the Coumadin Clinic, I talk to Faith, and I'm like, any chance you've heard that you guys are going to get to go to Aberdeen? And every time she tells me, no, they're going to move everything up to Bel Air. Okay, so if I can make it down and back in 30 minutes, I'm literally in the Coumadin Clinic for maybe 5 to 8 minutes. It just kills me to think of having to now drive to Bel Air, 30 minutes one way, depending on traffic, then you got to park, then you got to get into the building, then you got to wait. I mean, that's going to turn my 30-minute in and out during my lunch break now into easily a 2-hour trip. I mean, if there's any way at all you guys can find a facility, whether it be if they don't tear down the entire hospital building, or you can put something else there, a Coumadin Clinic is desperately needed. My parents both go there, I go there, and there are many other people here in the audience that also need the Coumadin Clinic. And one thing Faith has told me numerous times is this doesn't just affect Havre de Grace. A lot of their patients come from the western side of Cecil County as well. And, you know, Upper Chesapeake may not care, University of Maryland may not care how this impacts the patients, but it's much far reaching than just Havre de Grace.
Great, thank you for that. Eric, we have a gentleman in the back left in the blue polo shirt.
Hi, my name is Peter Plostens. I'm looking for real estate in Havre de Grace, and I like the old character. But let me ask you a couple of strategic questions. The only tool you got in your toolbox is the zoning, right?
I wouldn't say the only one, but it's the main one.
Well, what are the other ones?
We have a development regulation, so when people apply for a subdivision or that sort of thing, there's a review that they have to go through. There's different committees that they would have to go to, so now they go to Planning Commission. So the staff reviews it, Planning Commission also reviews it, decides on it. And that's a public hearing where we would get even more public input. I'm sure there's other things I can't think of, but zoning is one of the main ones for sure.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to follow up on some of Ed Garono's questions. So you got a hospital that owns the property, they're going to sell the property. They're going to sell to somebody that's going to want to make a profit. The one way that you can influence that is through the zoning, and as this gentleman says over here, the real influence is negotiating the RFP, okay? So you got 9 acres, all right? And you got different demands on those 9 acres from the people in this town, all right? So the question I have for you guys is, if you had to optimize those 9 acres, you want some kind of medical facility, you want to up your single-family homes in that area, you want to do those kind of things, what would you do your homework first to look at what kind of RFP you would get? Because the developer's got to make money out of this. But what kind of RFP would you want to see, and what would you want to do with that property over there to get some of these desires met and yet enhance the capabilities of Havre de Grace? I think that's the essential issue.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess the thing is that RFP would come from the owner of the property.
I understand that,
right,
but
so,
the question is, you get to guide him.
That's correct.
So my question is, can you do homework to look at what you would like that 9 acres to look like?
This is our homework.
Well, this is
here
input.
now.
I'm talking about a real plan that says,
Right, we've hired, so we have to do a study. So to change the zoning, you have to do a study, or it can be really easily legally challenged and switch back. So this is the very beginning and just one part of a larger study
So this is the
process.
beginning of that study.
Yeah, and that's why we have the folks from BLTA on board who are experts in this area. They have a sub-consultant that does just zoning stuff that's based out of Austin who are experts in that area. So they're all listening to this right now and on the side also doing their own study like you mentioned. That'll all be put together and then that'll be presented again to the mayor and council and the planning commission, and there'll be many more opportunities for all of you even to comment on that.
All right, well, then you're on the way.
Great. Thank you for your input though. I appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Bill Putland. I'm a long-term resident here in Havre Grace also, and I agree with so much that so many of you have said already. It's a tragedy what's happening, but I guess we just have to accept it and try to take this next opportunity to create something that that will continue to enhance Havre Grace and keep it how we want it. I'll be real curious to see what recommendations our architectural firm comes up with. Certainly, the original hospital that was used was a large Victorian home that was right on the corner of, I think, one of those corners there. Yeah. So, you know, if we have to go back to that, it would be very nice, you know, listening to the needs of the Kumanen Clinic. A lot of these, and radiology, you know, a lot of these doctors' offices, they're going to be closing and, you know, following the ambulance down the road, you know. So maybe that would be an opportunity for us to try to solicit some of these services that would be needed, and, you know, in a facility that that's existing that might not be too expensive for them to come in. It might make sense for them economically to provide some of those services. But I think it's great that you're doing this tonight, and we were sold out, and you know, they were criminals that were on the board of the board of directors that sold us out, and Lyle was in on that group too. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We have about 45 minutes left, so we still have enough time for everyone to talk. Just kind of wanted to let you know if you've been working up your courage this evening to get the microphone, now's the time. We have a gentleman in the back. Eric's getting his steps in. That's what's important.
Hi, I'm Chris Stathis. My wife and I live at 615 Commerce Street. Been here since 2007. I've worked with lots of groups in the city, including EDAB, and been involved in discussions about the hospital situation. Was actually on the Citizens Advisory Board that Lyle Sheldon put together a number of years ago. So I got to watch him as he talked, and, you know, he didn't break a sweat when he lied. But my reason for asking for the microphone is, one, I have a question. Does the city have a notion of what the asking price the hospital is looking at to get out of the hospital, out of the sale of the property? And the reason I asked that was, my understanding, and it's a bit dated at this point, was that they had a fairly large financial overhang, actually loans out, mortgage essentially, that they want to recover from it. And the reason I say that is because if there's, and I'm going to be a little bit of a gloom and doom guy here, if that's a big number and the city zones that only single-family residential can be put on the property, you add the cost of taking down the existing structure, doing all the asbestos abatement. There was also a small nuclear facility in there. They're going to have to spend a certain amount of money getting rid of that properly. Would it be viable for any developer to come in and put single-family homes on that tract? 9 acres, say they're $500,000 homes. I don't know that you can get enough homes on that site to make it worth their while. And then my doomsday scenario is, what happens then? And that leads to my last question. Is there any way that if that starts to become the apparent outcome, is that they can't find a developer that can work within what the city wants from a zoning perspective so they don't get any offers. Can we ask the state and the county to help us condemn the property and pass a bond issue where actually the city becomes the developer and we can put up what we want on it, as opposed to leaving ourselves open to the preferences of a developer who may not want to spend the money because they're not going to make sufficient profit back?
I think there were three questions generally there. So the first one is I am not, and I don't know that anybody in the city is privy to any economic situation about the hospital. I can't speak for the hospital. I can tell you that so far in this process, we haven't taken in the economic consideration of the hospital for what we're doing. This is a city-ran process to study the zoning in the area. If we had that information, could we possibly strategize in the way that you said? I suppose so, but we just aren't privy to that information.
Yeah, but do you want to wait for that to become the outcome before you have a plan to deal with it? Seems to me you should be asking those kind of questions up front.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Emily Hudak. I'm probably one of the newest residents here. My tiny little white house on Alliance Street was just finished last year. So I love this idea of doom and gloom, because I do think there's a lot of optimism about what the best thing could be in that spot. But think about the doom and gloom. Think about that path we just heard a little bit about. That who, for whatever reason, we're making things so restrictive that no developer would touch this with a 10-foot pole, and that the property falls into ruin. And yes, hypothetically, at the point it's been ruined and has all the foxes in and out of it and the raccoons for 10 years, we can raise money for a bond. But the realistic thing is that this is America. It's a capitalistic society. And really, the power of capitalism is that capitalism is really always out for that profit, and it can respond very quickly. So if we put up too many barriers and we block that capitalistic process, it's not going to end up well. I don't know if anybody is familiar with like all those little bad social experiments that just end poorly. The forces of the developers, these are clever guys. They want their money in their pocket, and they're going to make good decisions to get that money in their pocket. By shaping things with zoning a little bit, we might get a little bit of what we want. But going so hard to block anything would definitely be toxic in the long term. I know you all think I'm 12 years old, but I'm a little bit older than that. The first property I ever bought was a small townhouse in Falls Church City. And I was very lucky to buy that because the city had faced something similar. There was some buildings downtown, and nobody wanted any development on them. They didn't want anything to happen to them. And they sat abandoned for like 10 years. These were like big buildings in the heart of the downtown. The entire community around them suffered. It was good for me. The forces of capitalism readjusted the property prices straight downward, and Emily Hudak, with her little savings account, was able to get a small little townhouse. But it was also tragic for the community. And at the end of that cycle, the city was essentially forced to give concessions to developers so that they would even approach a development plan. And yes, giant, ugly, very dense apartments went in. But that actually did turn the entire neighborhood around, and things started to revitalize. So, I mean, just us as citizens have a lot of power, but we have to be gentle with it. We don't want to chase out some of the good sort of economic forces that will help the city, stay economically prosperous. So that's just what I would be concerned about. Let's always be optimistic, but remember that doom and gloom is something definitely to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly Boy Sadiq. I'm on North Union. I've been in town for 30 years, and I've seen lots of positive change, lots of sitting on the fence sort of thing, but I think this town is on the brink of something absolutely amazing. I work at the brewery on Market Street because I wanted to hear what people think about the town. Lots of folks come into town that don't have a clue about Havre de Grace. We've got the opportunity to really, really break through. We are, in my opinion, the greatest town in Maryland, without a doubt. If not the greatest town on the East Coast. It's a hidden gem. That location, could we not do a mixed use? I know with zoning and permitting and all of that, I'm not nearly at the pay rate to understand what you're able to understand. But that location, as large as it is, and in that side of town, I hear over and over again about the lack of lodging in town, a boutique hotel, a small garden restaurant, something that attracts lots of people. We've already got the built-in parking that we know we're lacking and that we're going to be losing with the revitalization of St. John and Washington. The opportunities are nearly endless. If they could use the building as it is, I know that according to what you've given us, the being able to revitalize it will be more expensive than actually rebuilding, which I get. But mixed use, have some smaller apartments or little shotgun houses like yours that I love so much on Alliance. But to get, not to totally turn our back on the history. I was born in that hospital. My grandmother died in that hospital. It's got our history. We've bled there, we've sweat there, but it's not a lost cause, I think. And because the onus of what we want is what we want. University of Maryland just wants money. Is there any way that we can give them kind of a portfolio of what could happen there? Mixed use, boutique hotel, boutique restaurants, that sort of thing, as opposed to them just going out and blindly saying, here's 9 acres, who wants it? You know, give me the best price. Because someone as a developer might not see the qualities of the town that we know this town has. This town is a gem. You know, they might just see the 9 acres that are up for sale. They don't see Havre de Grace. There's a big difference. Big, big difference. But I just think we're the best town ever.
Thank you. I think what you said is a good way that maybe we haven't explained as well as what we're doing right now, but we really are, as part of this process now, putting together that menu of items to go to the developer and say, you know, this is what the community wants. You know, now you need to sort of figure out what's viable, what can work for the community. So there is that kind of that back and forth, but this process is creating that menu that you discussed in your comment. Thank you.
My name's Charlie Packard. I've been a resident of Havre de Grace my entire life. The gist of what I hear tonight are people talking about what we're going to do with the hospital. Let's look at 9 acres. We're not talking about the eastern side of the 500 block of South Union. You've got property a block up next to the Foley house. You've got a huge piece of property on the 500 block of South Washington. We have property that's in this down to Market Street. There's property over on Lewis Street. So what we say we ought to do, you know, a boutique hospital, or hotel rather, that's fine for the 500 block. But what about the 400 block? That piece of property across from John Norvell, okay? That lends itself to a number of issues, but they're different. So I guess the elephant in the room is that 6-story tower hospital. But what about all those other parcels? You know, somebody said something earlier about mixed use. Well, you had 9 acres there. That is a huge group of properties, not one piece of 9-acre property. So, you know, there could be so many different uses, as Mr. Ford said. the garage was designed to be as much as 5 stories. And perhaps maybe you could put two more floors up there and mix that into some commercial use. I just think that, especially for somebody like me who's lived in Havre Grace, born in that hospital, you know, my wife was born there, and my son, we look at Union Avenue and we see the 4th of July parade. I mean, how many people in here envision walking down or marching down that parade route and seeing historic houses, a variety of different finishes? And that's what many of us envision for that one block where the hospital is. I encourage the development of a plan to incorporate as many different blocks of that property. Don't lump them all together, because what you can put on the corner at Market Street and Lewis is not the same thing that you can put on the corner of Revolution and Union. And there's property that maybe one developer will buy, and there may be 7 properties that numerous developers will buy. And I don't think we need to focus on looking at the hospital and saying, this is what we're going to develop.
Thank you, Charlie. If there's no one else, we still have time, so I think we're going to stick around. Alex and Milton have put together these great analyses of the city, just these existing condition studies that they've done from their end to just sort of provide some inspiration and kind of give you an idea from an architect's perspective what the city looks like. There's some interesting streetscapes on the board over here of the different streets and blocks like Charlie was just discussing. So we're going to hang out for another 30 minutes. If you want to come and grab us, it'd be great. It's still hot outside, so grab waters on your way out. I'm diabetic. Don't make me take those cookies with me, please. So we're going to hang out. And again, if you didn't leave your comment, this isn't the last time. We're going to have, if you signed up on the sign-up sheets downstairs, we'll start an email list, and anytime this comes back up for a public hearing, we'll notify all of you so you can come out again. If you have the agendas with you, there's a QR code there. You can go there and go to the Google form page and leave us feedback that way. My email address is on there, so you can give me feedback that way. So there's still tons of ways to give comments. If you didn't speak tonight, if you think about something when you go home, please get back a hold of us, and we're going to hang out for a while if you want to speak to us. Thank you for coming, everybody.